Following the UK's support of Ukraine in its conflict with Russia, GRU agents carried out arson, sabotage, and more dangerous actions conducted with increasing recklessness in the UK, according to Ken McCallum, who was providing his yearly briefing on security threats facing the country. He stated that MI5 had dealt with 20 plans supported by Iran since 2022, but that the bulk of its work remained involved Islamist extremism and extreme right-wing terrorism. MI5 has one hell of a job on its hands because to the intricate combination of nation-state and terror-related threats. He said, young people were increasingly being drawn into online extremism, with 13% of those investigated for terrorism involvement aged under 18. A total of 43 late-stage plots involving firearms and explosives to commit mass murder in the UK had been foiled since 2017. The number of state threat investigations by MI5 had increased by 48%. Counter-terrorism work remained split between 75% Islamist extremism, 25% extreme right-wing terrorism. There was a dizzying range of beliefs and ideologies MI5 had to deal with. He told the briefing at MI5's Counter-Terrorism Operations Centre in London, "The first 20 years of my career here were crammed full of terrorist threats. We now face those alongside state-backed assassination and sabotage plots, against the backdrop of a major European land war. The UK's leading role in supporting Ukraine means we loom large in the fevered imagination of Putin's regime, and further acts of aggression on UK soil should be expected," he warned. More than 750 Russian diplomats had been expelled from Europe since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The great majority of them spies, Mr. McCallum said. This affected the Russian intelligence service's capability, he explained, and added that diplomatic visas had been denied to those who Britain and allies considered Russian spies. Russian state actors turned to proxies, such as private intelligence operatives and criminals, to do their dirty work. But this affected the professionalism of their operations and made them easier to disrupt. While Mr. McCallum has spoken publicly before about both the Russian and Iranian threats, he has not previously accused Moscow in such stark terms. On Iran, he said the 20 Iran-backed plots MI5 had responded to presented potentially lethal threats to British citizens and UK residents. He said that since the 2022 killing of Mahsa Amini, the 22-year-old who died in Iranian police custody after being arrested for allegedly violating rules requiring women to wear the headscarf, we've seen plot after plot here in the UK at an unprecedented pace and scale. In a previous public address, he referred to 10 plots against Iranians in the UK. That number has now doubled, implying that Iranian state activity is undeterred by the threat of being caught. He added that, as the war in the Middle East continues, MI5 would give its fullest attention to the risk of an increase in or a broadening of Iranian state aggression in the UK. In both cases, Russia and Iran, the MI5 boss stressed that because it was difficult to almost impossible for their accredited diplomats to carry out such actions, they were turning increasingly to underworld criminal gangs. Speaking about China, he said the economic relationship with the UK helped to underpin security. However, he later told reporters the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, had a program to steal data and information, and we have seen 20,000 obfuscated approaches to individuals by China. The number of young people being drawn into online extremism is growing, Mr. McCallum warned. About 13% of those investigated for involvement in terrorism were under 18, a threefold increase in the last 3 years. The security agency was seeing far too many cases where very young people are being drawn into poisonous online extremism. Extreme right-wing terrorism in particular skews heavily towards young people, driven by propaganda that shows a canny understanding of online culture. Responding to questions from reporters, he reiterated concerns about the role of the internet being the biggest factor driving the trend, and described how easily youngsters could access material from their bedrooms. A high proportion of the threat was made up by lone individuals indoctrinated online. In dark corners of the internet, talk is cheap. Sorting the real plotters from armchair extremists is an exacting task. Anonymous online connections are often inconsequential, but a minority lead to deadly, real-world actions. Home Office figures published last month show that of 242 people detained on suspicion of terror offences in the year to June, 17%, 40, were aged 17 and under.